as well. So just to formally introduce myself, my name's Paul Kendall. I'm a strategic lead for operations at StreetGames, and I head up our work around, in particular, around our training and workforce offer as part of our training academy. My thought for today was, and apologies if people are very aware of StreetGames and what we do and where we are, and whether you've connected with us in the past in your communities. That's great if you have, but my plan was to just give you a little potted history of why StreetGames exists, who we are, and what we do really, and then I suppose open it to sort of any questions that we can answer here today, or follow-ups as a result of that. So StreetGames have existed for coming up for about 15 years now, 14 years, I want to say. So we were established around about 2008 and we're a national sport for development charity. And I really emphasize the word sport for development as opposed to just sport development. So we really use the power of sport and physical activity to create positive change in the lives of young people. And they're young people from low income, underserved communities is sort of our turn of phrase that we use to describe where we exist and where we make a difference. We were really born out of something going back to our start of it around sporting inequalities in lower income communities and young people in particular, where their more affluent counterparts were more likely to take part in sport to quite a significant level, and even more so likely to take part at a competitive or more elite level within sport. So you can just see that by the amount of medals that we've won. Even if you go back to the most recent Olympic Games in Tokyo, I think there's quite a startling statistic that 35% or more of the Olympians and Paralympians were from private school education, and private school education only accounts for about 6% of our total pupil output across the whole of the UK. So, as I said before, we harness this power of sport. StreetGames exists really as a very much a collaborative organisation. And we work with a network of what we call our LTOs, or our locally trusted organisations, which are in the region of about 1,000, 1,100 plus in the current stage. And those LTOs may range from very small one-man is dog coaching type companies who deliver community sport and activity within their area, and will help and support those guys through various means, to bigger organisations that might be connected with local authorities, professional sport club foundations, for example. But the thing that they have in common is that they work and they exist in disadvantaged communities, and they really share our ethos around what we call doorstep sport is powerful and can make a difference in young people's lives through various ways and means, really. So our work is set up into 5 different themes across our strategy and the type of work that we do. And those 5 themes relate to, firstly, what we call the sport and physical activity gap. So that idea of young people less likely to take part in sport and create as a habit or something that they enjoy doing on a regular basis. So lots of things that we might do fall into that category, and have been funded since our existence, really. So organisations like Sport Wales and Sport England, who fund us really largely for that particular theme in itself. The second theme of work that we are heavily invested in is in relation to what we call the holiday gap, and this is more in relation to things that have really come much more to prominence in the last couple of years, and certainly from a newsworthy perspective, and the work of Marcus Rashford in terms of that idea of holiday hunger during the school holidays. Young people in our less affluent communities more likely to have less nutritious meals outside of school time, but they're also less likely to take part in sport and activity, and that idea of isolation during that time as well, that they're isolated from friends, and again less likely to take part in sport. The three other themes that we work across is more in relation to what the first one is, healthier, and that really stretches the whole aspect through physical health as well as mental health as well. So we do a lot of work in youth mental health first aid, for example, and we also have done quite a little pioneering work around social prescribing as sport, as that thing that can really make a difference. But we've done it from a youth social prescribing point of view as well, which has never really been embarked upon. The next theme on that is what we call safer, and that's a lot of work that we do around community safety. I suppose if you had to boil it down, it was that aspect around reducing antisocial behaviour and using sport and activity as that tool and that means to try and achieve that. So we do a lot of work with youth offending teams in lots of communities across the country, as well as violence reduction units in certain pockets of the UK as well. And the final theme that our work can sort of be categorised into is what we call more successful. And this is the idea of young people having real clear open pathways to allow them to, as it says on the tin, be more successful in whatever shape or form that might be. Employability is a key part of this for a lot of young people, particularly since the pandemic, and some of those options becoming much more limited. We do a lot of work around pre-apprenticeships, apprenticeships, but also just, upskilling young people with the skills, experience, and gaining the confidence to do things, which might typically, in our world at least, be focused on using sport as that vehicle again to do that. So community sport activators is a thing that we've worked on with a lot of communities to try and create those opportunities for young people as well. And the final thing worth just saying around what StreetGames do and what we sort of describe as our beating heart of everything that we do is the term doorstep sport. And doorstep sport it's not really rocket science. It's that thing of just, again, utilizing sport in a way that resonates with young people, and in a way that they can put their own stamp on sport that's right for them. So we use a thing called the 5 rights, which to get the right sport and physical activity to encourage young people to continue that as a habit. We talk about that activity needs to have the right staff. It needs to be done at the right time. It needs to be done in the right style, in the right place, and at the right price as well. So, and if you're getting all those 5 things right, and that might be slightly nuanced and different within every community, you go in some way to make sure something can stick and be much more sustainable with a year-round offer for again what we call doorstep sport. I don't know if this might be useful for some of you to hear as well, just some examples of work that we've done within big locals that might chime with some of you and give some ideas. So a lot of the conversations that we have had with big locals has been very much focused on the idea of trying to create opportunities for or more opportunities for young people to take part in and establishing a year-round multi-sport offer. So a good example of this most recently is with the big local in Kirkhallam in Derbyshire, it's been a project which has really been stretched over the period of COVID, to be honest. So it became a probably aspirationally a shorter-term project, which has become a lot longer. But it's been very successful in trying to establish opportunities of sport and activity for young people 11 to 18 in their area. It's been invested in by that big local and match funded with the local trust in order to do that. Our StreetGames doorstep sport advisor has provided, I suppose, their expertise, their knowledge and their connectiveness in the area to make sure that this thing can be planned effectively and it can grow from that. So one of the RLTOs that we work with in that area, which in this case was Derby County and the community, have done a lot of the initial delivery of some of that activity for young people in the area. and that's been achieved alongside high school pupils who go there. It's also established a youth voice group on the back of what they've done. So a real young person-led group who have shaped what those activities could be. You know, the right time, the right style, and done in the right place has been in the heart of their conversations. And interestingly, outside of that, they've done, as a young person-led group, they've actually commissioned a project which has seen graffiti artwork placed on their local skate park as well, which has been really well received. It's reduced more sort of casual graffiti, shall we say, in that area. It's made it a nicer place to engage in their chosen sport and activity in a real nice setting as well, which has been good for that particular big local. I'll pause there. I know I can't stop for questions, Helen, but it's worth saying if there's anything that people actually want to put in the chat, or whether there's any questions in particular that you feel it might be worth me addressing to people who are on the screen as well.
Thanks, Paul. That was really useful. I'll just check. We've got one question in, a couple of questions in so far. You might have already covered the first one, which is, can you give us some more ideas or projects that you've supported community groups and other big locals with? I don't know if you wanted to expand on that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I can elaborate and perhaps give another couple of examples, if that's okay, Helen. So I was going to use the example of Heart of Sidley, which is a bit of an ongoing project at this moment in time. Again, COVID has, like the work of probably many of you, has been sort of interrupted at times to get their particular project off the ground. But with the help of the StreetGames Doorstep Sport Advisor in their area, they've gone about creating a mentoring and youth volunteering project. And that's been about encouraging more young people to become involved within their big local and upskill a cohort of young people to become the next lifeblood, the next volunteers within their area, which they're calling their community sport activators. So StreetGames' role and the locally trusted organisations in the area, their particular role has been not just going in and delivering and sort of leaving the area, but actually trying to build it up to become more sustainable. And that's been done by providing workshops, skills, qualifications for those young people concerned in our activator programs. So it's 3-hour workshops around things like multi-skill activator, ideas and qualifications alongside it, but also doing very sport-specific things in things like dance, basketball and boxing for them, as well as things like youth mental health first aid for the young people involved in it. And some sort of practical type sessions, like, you know, how do you managing challenging behavior is one that is always well received and gives people ideas to make sure that those activator type sessions that they're doing can be fun, engaging, and overcome some of the challenges that they may face within there as well. And then the other one, which isn't actually a big local project, but it perhaps might resonate with a few people on there, is we've got a particular work that we do with the Places for People Housing Association, scattered around different parts of the country. But obviously, as a housing association, they've got a vested interest in trying to put achieve particular things for their residents and for their communities that they're established in. And one of the things that they're doing is establishing weekly doorstep sport sessions in the right neighbourhoods and upskilling the involvement of those young people as volunteers, as the activators like Heart of Sidley are trying to do as well. One additional thing that they're doing, which is quite interesting, and I think, you know, could become a part of what we could offer to big locals as well, is this idea of sustainability support. So we're putting on, we have what we call our sustainability leads scattered around the country who are who help us access additional funding for StreetGames on behalf of our network through, you know, big pockets of money via national organisations to small things within local communities as well. But we're putting on funding workshops for those housing association communities and the volunteers involved in there, to give them ideas about how they could bring in pockets of funding to again keep things going, keep things as you know, low price if that's the thing that needs to be subsidized in order to make things happen for the young people in their area.
Thanks, Paul. That actually has led on nicely to the other question that we've got in on the chat, which is that if any sports programs they put on, they want to ensure that they're sustainable. So I guess you've answered this a bit in terms of funding, workshops, but could StreetGames help with that? And how, are there any other ideas or any other ways that you could go about making it sustainable?
Yeah, well, I suppose a lot of the things that I've thrown out there, are all based on that sustainable idea, whether that's, additional funding that needs to be required in order to make something in terms of subsidizing or paying for the costs of something else. I suppose the collaborative nature of the network is a good way to achieve that as well. So any organizations who want to get involved and talk about how a project might work in their area can also access our wider StreetGames network, and with that become some really good practical collaborative ideas within and around their area about how we might be able to support something in different ways. So whether that was about upskilling and creating more volunteer opportunities for young people, or whether that's just working with another organisation to not duplicate efforts, to make something more efficient in their area. There's lots of different ways to explore that as well as part of our network.
Thank you. That's sort of it for the questions, but please do, we've got a couple more minutes. So if anybody does want to pop something in the chat, please do, and I can read that out. While we're waiting, in case anybody does want to ask anything, something that comes up a lot, Paul, with our big locals is that often it can be quite difficult kind of involving and engaging young people in the partnership and in the big local activities. And is, in your opinion, in the work that you do, is sport a really good way of doing that, a really good kind of hook in? And yeah, have you got any thoughts on how to engage and involve young people?
Yeah, if anyone's not had the opportunity to see it, I recently put on the workplace group, I think it was last week, was a resource or a tool which is hopefully a fairly simple, easy to follow PDF, which talks around our approach to youth voice and how best to try and engage young people within your community, to make them feel part of it and take on that ownership of trying to develop something within their area. So it's something that we're really passionate about. We're always firmly on the side of young people, and I think things like that can and do really make a difference within the patch. We've had so many examples of how sport has changed young people's lives, whether that's just becoming a thing to get involved in as a participant, to becoming a volunteer, to becoming a coach, to become an administrator, whatever, and it may or may not be. There are some great opportunities for them to get involved. We've got some live examples this week where we've been able to take a group of young people from different parts of the country to Glastonbury, for example, help us do bubble football alongside all the fun stuff that's happening there, and they get to experience something that they may or may not have otherwise done. And we're gearing up for a big summer based around the Commonwealth Games and what we're calling our Inspire Generation 2022. With summer camps taking place and tickets to go alongside to some of the major sporting events, because in lots of our communities, accessing live sport or being able to actually view live sport as a game becomes something which has become much more difficult to do if you don't have the money and the affordability or the disposable income to be able to do that as well. So there'll be some more resources that I can try and drop through onto the workplace site as well, Helen. But if people also want to visit our website, we do have resources available on there for those type of ideas about how you can utilize some of those things in simple ways to just try and connect better with young people and allow them to become part of what you're trying to achieve within your big local areas.
Brilliant, thank you. I'll just check to see if any other questions have come through, but just in the last sort of couple of minutes, I want to say thanks, Paul, for coming along and telling us more about Street Games and the support that you can provide. My colleague is going to pop into the chat our support email address. So if to any people that are listening, if this has interested you and you'd like to find out more, please do get in touch with the team, with the Partnerships and Learning team at that email address, or visit our website, or check on Workplace, because as Paul said, there will be kind of lots of resources being posted on there, and information and links through to useful articles and information. And also just a reminder that we do have other support on offer around a varied topics, so community engagement, mastering your communications, or climate proofing your big local plan. So if you're interested in getting in touch, then please do. I've just seen actually that I think there's another question come in at the end. So Debbie has asked, are there any licenses or permissions needed for street games to take place? Do sports activators just arrive in a street and deliver the activities, or are parks used? So there's two parts to that, Paul.
So the first question, Helen, sorry, was that about, did you say license qualifications?
Yeah, are there any
deliverers?
Yeah, are there any licenses, permissions needed for street games to take place?
Yeah, I mean, that will be worked out by, again, what we call our DSAs, doorstep sport advisors, and they would give you the right advice in terms of that. There are obvious things, you know, in relation to safeguarding, and those deliverers, if that's, you know, direct activity to young people, they would need to make sure that they've got the qualifications and the appropriate DBS safeguarding measures in place in order for them to deliver that. But any of our LTOs that we might connect with, so the example within Kirk Hallam and Derby County in the community coming in to actually do that delivery, will have had all those protocols in place so they can safely and effectively deliver sort of fun and engaging sessions. So it wouldn't be a problem, but it would need to be planned for accordingly to make sure that that is the case. Where activity takes place is sort of dependent on what's at your disposal, I guess, really. So some places have really nice, you know, mugger type facilities where we do a lot of activity on. Some things might just happen in a park or on a field. We actually do a very specific parks activator course where it's about, you know, ultimately boils back down to asset-based community development and making best use of the facilities that are at your disposal. So a lot of our sport, particularly the multi-sport activator type stuff that we would advise and try and get people to do, can take place in a variety of places, whether that's a car park, a park field, a nice sort of 3G football surface, or an indoor sports hall, or local, you know, gymnasium or community space. So wild and varied are the places where doorstep sport takes place, and that just depends what, you know, you're lucky or unlucky enough to have on your doorstep is the sort of the not very good answer.
Thank you. I appreciate that we're coming to the end of the Workplace Live now, so I'll draw it to a close. But thank you again for everybody that's posted in the chat and listened in today. And yeah, just to say again, get in touch if you're interested in finding out more at the email address that's in the chat. And thank you, Paul, for taking part. And yeah, and keep an eye on Workplace for some of those posts and the resources being shared on there.